Let's hear it for voices getting louder, clearer, stronger, bolder. Let's hear it for those who are fighting fit and raring to go. Let's hear it for heroes rewriting India's stories. Let's hear it for women wanting change and for women leading it. Let's hear it for the power of expressing, arguing, agreeing, questioning, and for being vocal. Let's hear it for each other. Let's hear it for the power of 500 million.
Good morning and welcome to day 5 of the Economic Times Women's Forum. I'm your host, Mini Mathur. The 2020 edition of the forum is presented by MasterCard and supported by Google. And thank you for your support in celebrating the power of 500 million Indian women. It's been a month since we kicked off this edition of the forum and time has just flown by. And over the course of the last few weeks, we've heard inspirational stories of women from diverse fields: sports, medical science, technology, mental health, stunt biking, and even politics. We have an exciting lineup for the remainder of the forum as well, and we look forward to your continued participation. We begin the day with a story about hope and positivity. Our first speaker has been a leading film actor and wowed us for years with her charisma on and off screen. More recently, it is her strength and courage that has also shown through as she has staged a public battle against cancer. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Finding the Positive with Sonali Bendre.
Thank you, Minnie. Welcome to the ET Women's Forum and to this interaction with the amazing Sonali Bendre, a leading lady in blockbuster movies and now a leading light in the fight against advanced cancer. Sonali has used her star power not just to illuminate the disease, but the issues around it. These are issues that women, with or without illness, face and grapple with every day. So thank you, Sonali, for finding time to be with us and for taking us on a personal journey, your personal journey, to finding the positive.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here and great to see you, Sarah, after so long. It's been a while.
Likewise, Sonali. Sonali, yeah. I'll start straight off. Yeah. It's been a little over 2 years since your cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
You were given a 30% chance of survival every morning since July 4th, 2018. What are your thoughts when you wake up?
Well, I think everything is a phase, and I think I've reached a phase where I'm healing now. And touch wood, this June of 2020, it would be a year of me beginning a process where only healing is what is going on. I'm doing my scans and everything, but it's all been good. So it's been a year now that, I've not had to stress about what is it that I'm putting into my body and what is it that I'm doing. So I would say that for a year now, the journey from just being a physical aspect the mental aspect has taken the precedence at this point of time, more than the physical aspect, because physically I am healing, but I'm beginning to focus on the mental aspect also.
Wonderful. Chance of survival, such a harsh phrase. How did it feel to confront a 70% chance of death versus a 30% chance of being alive?
Well, I would say that when the doctor said that, I'll be very honest with you, I wanted to get up and smack his face when he said it. I was so upset and I just wanted to, there was just anger in me that it can't be. And I just wanted to literally, if I could, I wanted to physically, smack him in his face at that point of time. And I just stared at him. And I looked at Goldie next to me and I said, what the hell is he talking? He doesn't know what he's saying. And Goldie is like, calm down. And, there's no point in being in denial. So he was the sane factor right next to me. But yeah, it did take that a little while. And then I took a couple of breaths and I said, okay, how do I deal with this? This is not the way to deal with it where I'm just going to lose control about it. There's nothing that the doctor can do about it. There's nothing that I can do about it. The faster I accept it, the faster the next phase starts,
Right.
So yeah, that was the night when I went home. I think I must have cried the whole night that point. And as I saw the sun rising, amongst the buildings, I was sitting at the window and I cried the whole night. And I promised myself this was the last night that I was going to sit and feel sorry for myself and cry about something that I don't want sympathy and I'm not going to be the victim. This is it. This is what life has been wonderful. It's given me some wonderful moments, some wonderful things. I'm going to look at what are the positives that I have. And I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole of feeling sorry for myself and feeling pity for myself and saying that, how could this happen to me? It has happened. What's the next step? And that was the night. And after that, I have never looked back in pity and sympathy or why did this happen to me? No, those questions I have not asked myself again.
Sonali, you mentioned mentally healing now. Back then too, you sought counseling.
Yes.
That said, are there still some times when you feel afraid? And what do you do to chase away those dark thoughts?
So when I mentioned that I'm mentally healing now, which also means that there is more focus on the layers of mental healing. Right. I'm going to try to explain this because, I'm also kind of understanding this. Because I think what happens is that none of us really think of our mind as needing healing or needing treatment. Right. So we keep focusing on the physical aspect or the material aspect of it. But there's so much that happens in your mind. My mind was, in a way, a part of my healing process, of course, because I needed the strength that my mind gave me. And I did use that. I took the counseling and all that. But there was still a lot of physical aspect to it. Right. It was like how my mind can tell my body to get better. How can I use my mind to heal this? How can I use my mind to, there was a lot of physical aspect to it. Now, since this past year, I realized that without the physical aspect, when there is no, this part of my body needs healing, or this part of me is in pain. When this physical aspect is not there, I still need healing. And this pandemic has brought that to the forefront. This pandemic and sitting at home and being with yourself, though I kept feeling when the pandemic started that, immunity has to be better. This is what I've been living with for the last 2 years. I'm on top of it.
Exactly.
But no, I'm not. In fact, there are times when I feel that when I went through my cancer diagnosis was a better time than what I'm going through now or what we all are going through now. Right. Because there's a certain collective negativity or dullness, which, I took a lot of strength from people around me, from the fans, from what people were writing to me. I was sucking the positivity from all of that, which right now I'm not able to find. So, it's more difficult, I feel, at this point of time than it was when I was diagnosed with the disease. So I think it's time to look for counseling and seek help yet again.
Sonali, you have tapped into your immense reserves of strength and power. Do you think these powers are readily available to all women, but they are shackled by their own fear?
I think they're available to all of us human beings. And we don't even realize what is there in our DNA, in our genetics. And there is a whole lot of civilization and our forefathers that are within us. And there are lessons from all of those things that the earlier generations have gone through that are within us. Mm. And if we can acknowledge that and accept that and kind of try to tap into it, there's a lot of reservoir of strength that comes in and can be accessible to all of us.
Was it fearlessness, the same fearlessness that you're tapping into deep inside, that made you go public with your diagnosis? And what were your thoughts just before you pressed that send button, on your social media post announcing your high-grade cancer?
I was not fearless at all at that point of time, at all. I think I was very fearful. And my fear at that point of time was that there will be gossip around what I'm going through. And there will be a lot of talk that could affect my family. And that would affect my son and my old parents and, my support system, my sisters, etc., my sisters-in-law. So my fear was about how will it be, what will be the gossip that would get attached to what I am coming out with what I am not telling. And
Right.
that's the reason why I wanted to put it out in my words and say it as it is, so that there is no, there is no negative talk, or really, like, we all know how it can be. I didn't want rubbish being spoken about it. And hence I put it out and I hit that send button as you said it. According to me, that was going to be that's it, after which I was going to be on a sabbatical. But
Right.
the surprise was I did that and I went off to sleep. And after a while, when I look at my phone started going berserk.
Right.
Messages, mails, and on my social media, the kind of messages that I was getting and the way people reached out. What I realized from that, when I read all the messages, was that one, this disease is really not as uncommon as I thought it was. Two, this disease was across genders, across class, across stratas of society. It was there across the world and in all sorts of age groups. So there was just I was like, this is amazing. I didn't know it was so prevalent. Then I asked myself, why did I not know this? And that's because nobody really talks about it. And I was like, I wish it was spoken about a lot more, because the cancer that I had I detected it early, I would not have had to go through what I was going through at that point of time. I mean, treatments are also so much better now than they have ever been. Science has really gone forward. You might not have that absolutely bang on cure for cancer, but when you detect it earlier, you can save lives. And but if you get cancer, doesn't mean this is the end. It really just means that you can go through a treatment and you can get back to life the way it used to be. So when I understood all these things, that was when the fearlessness came in. And I said that, what, I owe it to myself to put my journey out there, so that people start talking about it. Because, if there is another woman who's going through what I'm going through and is just not going in because you don't want to go in for the testing, then you know what? We need to drop everything that we are doing and test ourselves, because that is what is important. And I really wanted that message to get across. And the second thing was that I sat down when I decided that I was going to share the journey. I did not want to put out some really sad pictures and really sadness about it, because frankly, the way my family, my friends, and everybody had come out in support, I actually felt a lot of joy and I felt loved. And I wanted that part, that feeling of love, of the feeling of being loved, and that feeling of the joy. I wanted to kind of communicate that just because there is something that's happening to you doesn't mean the end of life, and doesn't mean that it has to be sad. You can find joy in it, and you can find something positive in it, and you can build something new from what you're going through.
Is that why you decided to showcase your bald look, even refusing to turn your cut hair into a wig for yourself? You let go of an important part of your identity, Sonali. And being a movie star who's associated with poise and glamour, how difficult was that?
It was. It still is hard. Now that my hair is back, but that moment, what you feel, and that moment of letting go of something that was so integral. You've seen my career. I think I've done every hair product possible as a model. And my hair
Exactly.
is a huge part of my identity. And I also learned how much I hid behind my hair, So it was a huge moment for me to let go of that, not knowing that is it going to come back, or how is it going to come back, if at all, and all of that. So yes, but the fact was that either you cut it and you make a clean break, or you kind of hold on to it. And that wouldn't go with the narrative that I had in my mind. The narrative in my mind was of no sympathy, no pity, finding the newness, finding the new normal, and finding joy in it. And if I wanted to achieve that, then I had to let go and I needed to cut that cord. So it was just like, okay, this is it. It's gone. I cut it short, didn't turn it into a wig. And eventually, I thought that the idea was I was waiting for one of my sister and one of my friend to join me. And the idea was that when I went bald, I would be with all of these women next to me. Of course, my husband was with me through the whole thing and my son was with me through the whole thing. But all of these friends and sisters next to me. And we really thought that I was, go into the salon, shave my head, and we would open a bottle of champagne. And though I was not drinking, we would make it into a celebration, like literally go out and celebrate. That was the idea. It didn't happen like that. When I went bald, it was the cliche of the century. It was exactly the way it happens in all those stories and the movies and everything. It was a meltdown in my shower when I saw all that hair going and it coming out literally in clumps in my hand. And it was a breakdown. It was a meltdown. And I took a razor to my head and I shaved it. And that was what it was.
Sonali, the world has impossible beauty standards for women, which also is reflected in the pain that you just described. Now, what advice would you give to women who, are confronting the loss of a key aspect of their appearance? You've been through it. So what is the advice that you would give women who are similarly, facing loss of a breast or, any other body part that is connected to their appearance?
So the other thing that I did was I remember calling up Anita at that point of time. Anita Shroff was with Vogue at that point, is with Vogue. So when I was over there, I said, Anita, I'm going to come back. And I have a scar which is about 22 inches long and I'm bald. And the steroids that have been pumped into me has bloated me up. And I'm like 10 kilos above what I was, or definitely 7-8. Right. And I'm definitely not feeling beautiful or looking it. And I think it's very important that when I'm feeling my worst, I want to do a photo session where I want you to make me wear the most glamorous outfits. And I just want to go out there with the bloat, with the weight, with the bald head, with the scar, and go out there and do this just so that I break this fear that I have, that how will I step out? Every time that I have feared, how will I step out and how will I face the world? I have pushed myself, and be it the bald-headed look or be it this photo shoot that I did with Vogue, when I went out there and I did it, it was more like, okay, is this what I'm fearing? Here, smash the fear, stamp it, and go out there and put it out there. And yes, that's not the way. And hopefully, like now when I look at it, that's definitely not the way that I'm looking now. And you know what? I'm really glad I did it, because that is a reminder of what is the reality and what it can be. So don't get so carried away with what you have now and these looks. They can be gone in a second. And that is the reminder for me that the reality is beyond what is physical. It's not easy to accept it. It's so easy to slip back into it. It's something that you have to remind yourself of constantly. But that is the reality.
Sonali, you just said something very important, that the reality is beyond the physical. And yet so many women are petrified of aging. Given your cancer experience while still young, do you think that being able to grow old is a gift and that women should embrace it as a blessing?
Maybe, I don't know how to explain it, but when I was younger, I really thought my face was so blank, no lines, and I thought it was so meh, really very okay. I really think that I have always liked faces which have character to them. That little chip tooth or a little line there. I just find those faces so fascinating because I feel those faces tell you a story. It's a story of a life lived. And I've always liked those spaces more. So very honestly, I'm looking forward to having a face and a body that tells a story. Not easy. There are so many times when it's so easy to fall back into what has been programmed about
Right.
how perfect can you be. But
Right.
every time that happens, I'm slowly reminding myself and letting go, letting go. So I've always told my friends that if ever I want to touch my face or do anything, because I have nothing against it, and I'm not saying that one shouldn't. I'm in a profession where I'm in front of camera, and the way you look is very important, etc., etc., etc. So I get it that you will want to. It's like how you maintain your body, maintain your health. You will want to do a few things, but I've told my friends that if ever I kind of start getting a bit weak about it and start wanting to look at bolstering this aging process, please whack me on my head and stop me from doing it. You have full permission in writing to, kind of literally give me a whack on my head and say, stop it.
Sonali, I have one last question for you. Your life has been like a movie, except that you've never let go of the starring role and you have remained in control of your scripts. What should women do to script their own destiny and to be in charge of their own life? Especially those women who don't have the support that you've had from, your husband, your son Ranveer, your friends, your family, your fans. What should they do?
Well, like you said, if you think my life has been a movie and if I have played the starring role in it, then I would say that that is something that's not an overnight thing. This
Right.
is something now when I look back, it's definitely something that has been worked on from the beginning of my career, from the early part. And I think that script started with my parents and in the way they brought me up and the confidence that they gave me in myself. The support system that you talk about, we all have to make those choices.
Right.
Now, for example, when I got married to Goldie is younger than me. He is not well settled, as you would call it. I was ready to moving into a place. Uh, he had lost his father very, very young. He was the male in the Punjabi household in that sense.
Right.
He had three sisters. He has three sisters, mother, and his grandmother was also alive at that time. So there were five women. Only my elder sister-in-law had just recently gotten married. So there were four women in the house whom he was very much responsible for, or I would say he felt responsible for, because they're all amazingly wonderful, strong women themselves. But he felt responsible for and should be. So my mother asked me at that point of time that why would you choose to spend your life with this person? He had barely started. He had what you would call one of the biggest debacles, whatever, my pronunciation is wrong in this, of his career. There was no financial stability. He was in debt at that point of time. So everything that you would look at was a negative for me. And a lot of people said that to me also. But I was in love. And I would say we were in love. And when my mother asked me this, I said, you know what? There will be a lot of people who will probably give me cars and homes. But I have a home with you, which I have bought myself. I have cars, which I have bought myself. And I know that I can do these things for myself. I said, but what I can't give for myself is seeing that I have a partner in life who will respect me for what I am, who will respect me when the makeup is off, who will respect me when I have a runny nose and a cough and I'm really not looking my best, and who will respect me because I have certain point of view and an opinion. And it'll not be someone who will probably give me the material bit of it, and then I don't know where he is off to and who he is off with. So I said, I get it, and this is the choice I'm making. My mother just looked at me, and that was the moment, and she said, you have my blessings. It's going to be a hard life, but you have my blessings. And my father said the same thing. So what I'm trying to say is, the support system is what you build around you.
Thank you so much for your poignant, positive, and joyful sharing, Sonali, and most of all, thank you for being with us today. It's been a total pleasure.
Thank you, Sonali and Saira, for that moving conversation. Sonali, as an actor, your films have always been a beacon of hope and joy for millions. You continue to motivate us to be better by showing us that even the toughest of challenges can be faced with positivity and tenacity. So thank you so much for that. And what a stirring conversation that was. I would like to remind all of you to spread the message shared by these amazing women through your social media handles. And when doing so, don't forget to use hashtag Let's Hear It and hashtag ETWF 2020. Next, we have a fireside chat around the topic of entrepreneurship. Sapna Chadda, Senior Country Marketing Director at Google, will be joined by Megha Chawla, partner at Bain India, as they discuss and share their findings on how women entrepreneurs have fared during the current socio-economic crisis. Has the COVID-19 pandemic been a turning point for women entrepreneurs? Let's find out.
Good morning and a very warm welcome to the Economic Times Women's Forum. Today we are discussing the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic had on women entrepreneurs in India. I'm Rika Bhattacharya from the Economic Times, and I have here with me two very senior members from the corporate world who've been working in the area of women's entrepreneurship for several years. I have with me Sapna Chadha, Senior Country Marketing Director for India and Southeast Asia at Google. Also here with us today is Megha Chawla, who is a partner at Bain. While Sapna is very passionate about leveraging the power of technology and digital to reduce the gender gap in entrepreneurship, Megha leads Bain's effort to promote women's entrepreneurship in India. Thank you very much, both Sapna and Megha, for joining us for the chat today.
Glad to be here.
In fact,
Great to be here.
Thank you. In fact, Bain, in collaboration with Google, recently conducted a research to look at the impact of the ongoing crisis on women entrepreneurs in India and to understand if COVID-19 can be a turning point for women entrepreneurs. The survey, which reached out to about 350 solopreneurs and small business owners in urban India, found that 73% of the women entrepreneurs said they have been negatively impacted by the crisis, while almost 20% said their business revenue was nearly wiped out. So my first question to both my panelists is, how would you say has the pandemic impacted women entrepreneurs in India, both positively and negatively? Or, what are the pros and cons? Megha, if we can start with you, please, on this.
Sure. So, look, even before the research, I think it was quite apparent and clear that women have had a disproportionate negative impact of the pandemic, especially because of the entire shift to home, of the entire home ecosystem. Everyone is home, schools have stopped, mobility's got constrained. Now, women entrepreneurs have obviously had the double impact because it's also halted business. And while we knew going in that the impact is quite devastating, and if I may say, fracturing in the near term, our objective was to look at what are entrepreneurs facing and feeling at this point, and are there opportunities and challenges that need to be known and understoed well. So we looked at urban entrepreneurs, and you're right. We saw, not surprisingly, a large number of women who said that there has been a complete, a devastating impact on the business. But what we also saw was that of the challenges, the first challenge that was cited was exactly what would be true for any entrepreneur, which is muted customer demand. But the second challenge was just a massive increase in the responsibilities, the domestic care burden, which is already very high. Interestingly, we probed for opportunities as well, right? And what we saw was that women were surprisingly and quite encouragingly very optimistic. About 90% of the women said that they're optimistic and fairly upbeat about the future and expect a bounce back. And when the numbers were something like 54% have already pivoted, adapted their business model to survive in the new order, and another 25% had planned to do it by December. So I don't want to make light at all of the near-term impact. And while some businesses have found ways to recover, there are businesses which are more capital-intensive, manufacturing-oriented, which will suffer for a longer time. But I did also want to call out that the optimism and the opportunities that were cited by our respondents were very encouraging for us.
Sure. So there are optimism and opportunities, as you say. So my next question is to you, Sapna. Since you care deeply about making the internet equitable from a gender diversity lens, we've been hearing a lot of anecdotes over the last 7-8 months of the pandemic about women quickly adapting to the new normal or new ways of doing business. Even your survey talks about that. My question to you is, how can technology and the power of digital help women entrepreneurs find out newer avenues?
That's a great question. The entire SMB ecosystem has been impacted as a result of the pandemic. And as Megha said, women-owned businesses are even more and disproportionately impacted. And we saw that the impact of COVID on women-owned businesses is much higher as for women as compared to men. And actually, as was also mentioned, 1 in every 5 women-owned businesses have seen their revenue completely wiped out. I think, in terms of where technology plays a great role, it's that in terms of helping women in this desire that they have to adapt. I think women we've seen have been able to add new products and services to their existing portfolios. They're thinking outside of the box. They're adding social media and the use of digital marketing in ways that just seem more natural and inclined to women. So in spite of the challenges that are there, we see that experimentation mindset for a lot of women is very strong. I'll give you one just very quick example. Sitara Foods, it's a business owned by 2 women entrepreneurs, Aparna and Bhavya. They were a small business, went from 5 to 50 employees pretty quickly, and COVID, turned their world upside down. They were leveraging, logistics and delivery, and they had to change their complete model during this time. And what they were able to do was they were able to develop a way to reach their customers in newer ways. They adapted digital marketing. They found new customers. They used insights to actually change their product line. And this is just, one example, I would say, of women that are resilient. I think that's the thing that you find with all stories that we've seen is women are resilient. They're willing to adapt to the new reality that they're in, and they're finding creative techniques, and they're open to adopting new forms of digital as a way of life. Like, this isn't seen as a short-term thing, and they've been able to pivot and really embrace technology. That said, it's not easy, right? And I want to make sure that it's not, that we don't discount how complex it is. Obviously, women have to balance, their home lives. They have low personal savings, low assets, limited financial support. But when they do get what we see at Google, when they get basic digital skills and when they get core business knowledge on how to do their businesses online, women are able to integrate different parts of their business and, and show and demonstrate this resilience during this time.
Sure. My next question, I would like to ask you, Megha, about this most important question, which is for any entrepreneur, men or women, access to capital. However, when it comes to women, lack of finance is one of the biggest challenges which pre-existed even before COVID. A lot of times investors and VCs are known to have questioned women on their, personal priorities, things like marriage, kids, etc. However, now with the fast tracking of technology adoption, as Sapna was referring to in the past few months, and the current, remote working milieu, do you think, it may create a level playing field for women? Would such questions on personal priorities come down? Or in other words, will access to capital become easier in the post-COVID world?
Right. If I look at urban entrepreneurs who generally have access to, to all of the knowledge, the ecosystem, the network it still may not be the same as men, but it's still relatively a lot higher than what you see in semi-urban India, small enterprises, informal enterprises. I'm not very sure if remote working would actually make it a lot easier for them, right? Because I think, their challenges were, and what was inhibiting access to capital is really a skew in the investor and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and it feeds off each other, right? The other end of the spectrum, which is a huge part of India, are a large number of small, I wouldn't even say medium, small and micro enterprises. Many of them are actually informal. Here, the access to capital should actually change in a more digitalized world. I wouldn't say necessarily a post-COVID world, but definitely as we look at some of the changes happening in the Indian ecosystem, as we see the open banking programs, digital lending stack taking shape, I think that reduces the cost to serve, that allows a much broader reach for formal lending, and allows innovation and product, which obviously for the longest time have been designed for men, right? They've been designed for businesses that were largely run by men and did not take into account the nuances of how women-owned businesses are run. And I believe this change in the digital lending ecosystem is actually provides a huge tailwind to create a more equitable or a better access to capital for some of the smaller entrepreneurs as well.
On financial inclusion, I think it's really important that we look at policy intervention here. 80% of women hold bank accounts, but only 50% of these accounts are active. And we have to think about, why is this happening in India? And if you think about just pure access to technology, access to finance, it's not enough to just give access to these things. You need to be able to drive usage. You need to drive efforts towards literacy and education and awareness. I think these are the things that we're not investing in today as much as we need to. Just providing access to everyone is not enough, right? To level the playing field, we need to think about how there's gender disparity across economic, social, and cultural barriers that really are getting in the way for women. That has resulted in poor education levels, poor employability. India has one of the lowest workforce representation numbers. We also have one of the biggest gender gaps online in the world, right? And why is this happening is because we aren't investing in the areas to be able to support women in these avenues for growth. We need to think about how we can particularly spend our time, both from the private sector and the public sector, enabling, empowering, not just saying, okay, we check the box that it's there. Capital is there, financial inclusion is there. It's not enough to check the box. We need to think about all of the other barriers that are in the way for women and why they're not embracing these, these tools in the way that we would like, because there's ultimately a lot of social and cultural barriers that are getting in the way of women today.
So, Sapna, I would like to ask you that, especially in the current disrupted environment, what role can training and mentorship play to enable women to start new ventures, or existing women entrepreneurs to maybe quickly transition to a new line of business, or doing things in a new way using technology, or even to scale up?
That's a great question. I think I'll before I get to entrepreneurship, I want to talk a little bit about India's internet landscape. We've taken the lead to become the fastest growing internet user market in the world. But for Google in India, what we've seen is that there is a huge gender gap online. And we realized that one important segment was being missed. Only 1 in every 10 internet users online back in about 4 years ago was a woman, 1 in 10. Why does this gap exist? Women are holding themselves back. They're being held back by their families. They're being not supported as much as we would like. And that's where we started a program called Internet Sati. And this was probably one of the world's biggest mentorship programs that has existed, where in every village, across half of India's villages, about 300,000 villages, we created a mentor, and we called her an Internet Sati. And we asked her to basically teach others around her, and to teach others with the tools and knowledge that we were able to give her, because we realized only friends can help friends. You can't just preach. You need to have daily, ongoing mentorship. And what we saw through that program is that we impacted, over 30 million women who then had their eyes open because they had these women as friends teaching them how digital could become an opening to a world to making themselves more equal. And what we then saw is that as these women gained more confidence, a lot of them started their own businesses. We saw that 7 out of 10 of the women who attended the trainings, they were able to see an improvement in their own education, their kids' educations, and actually 5 in 10 of them saw a positive impact on their employability. What has this done? This has actually given rise to a number of entrepreneurs who are using digital in ways that they had not known before, and it's only because of mentorship. It's only because they had that hand-holding. And now what we're doing is we're taking that to the next level. We're creating an accelerator. An accelerator in the world of VCs is where you are assisted in a much more significant way. And we've created what's called an Internet Sati Accelerator, where we're helping these women through and partnering. We're partnering with Shiro's, we're partnering with Bain, we're partnering with a number of companies that have come together in this coalition to say, how do we take these women who have these great ideas and give them the knowledge and the information that they need? Actually, I'll just keep stressing on that point. It's not only because of these economic barriers that exist for women that they're not moving forward. It's because of all of these other cultural and social barriers, and therefore mentorship in India will be the single thing that will drive women into entrepreneurship, and we see success there.
Sure. Megha, would you like to add to that? What role can mentorship play?
I wholeheartedly agree with everything Sapna said. Right? I think it is at the end of the day, it comes down to you can have access to all the tools, you can have access to knowledge, but I think running a business is hard. It's very hard with best of access. So in such situations, I think mentorship of all forms, right? Peer mentorship, mentorships from cohorts who have done this before you, and just getting creative around providing mentorship, all of this has a critical role to play. We've seen some really interesting examples. I think Sapna spoke about the incredibly inspiring rural accelerator that Google has taken the lead on. Along with that, we've seen a pretty high, an expansion in the kind of content and training that is getting delivered online. It's the hardest thing to scale digitally, if you ask me, right? Because mentorship, for it to work, has to be organic. But I think we're seeing more and more very creative models on how this is taking off digitally and actually replacing what we had. And this is largely because we've all been forced to embrace a digital model. But what it's allowing now is just expanding the reach, allowing mentors and mentees to access a far larger set of expertise. I think it's, as Sapna said, I think it is the single most important thing. I think if you ask any entrepreneur today, it's really what is the day-to-day interactions, the harsh messages, the coaching that one gets, and I can see how, and hopefully through digital delivery methods, this is going to expand further and take on more creative forms for them.
Sure. So mentorship is the single most important thing for women entrepreneurs. Megha, if you take the solopreneur universe, about who you talk about in your survey, what are the areas women are most engaged in, and what are the new areas that they can get into? And the second part of it, maybe Sapna, I would want to ask you that how can technology and digital again help them in doing this?
I've seen a fairly wide spectrum of sectors that solopreneurs are present in, but usually these are, the sectors you see dominate are those which are initially more accessible. Manufacturing, the manufacturing of apparel, F&B, coaching, fitness classes, right, which require usually to start with lesser mobility, to start with lesser capital. Now that might change over time, but that reduces the barriers to get into it. How does this change looking ahead? I think it just opens up COVID on one hand, the fact that you can the fact that you can do a lot more of entrepreneurship is a lot more accessible now, just given everybody's online. I can see solopreneurs looking to get into businesses that were traditionally required physical presence a lot more. I can see them now getting into more of those businesses which would require actually in-person interaction with the supplier ecosystem, with the customer ecosystem. I can see with the edtech boom, I can see a lot more women actually formalizing their coaching, their coaching or skilling or counseling enterprises. And the reason I say this is, the edtech boom, we know, right, the teacher base in India, the coaches, tuition providers, these are, when you think about it, you think about women. Yet in the edtech space today, I don't see very many women. And hence, I do actually see women capitalizing and I'm already seeing it, right? I'm not waiting for it. We're actually seeing it happen. So I think it just widens the spectrum a lot more. Some of it has been initiated by COVID, like EdTech, which just got like this boom with remote learning. Of course, F&B has again started to ride on and to actually take advantage of the vocal for local championship that's happening. Some of these are COVID, some of these are just related to where India is in its digital journey. But like I said, I do see it expanding a lot more. It still tends to have a few characteristics. Can work remotely if when needed, can work, has lesser capital investment to start with, and often more service than manufacturing oriented, but sincerely.
Sapna, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, coming to your question on, again, the role of technology, and I think the digital transformation that India is undergoing right now, it provides new avenues for economic empowerment of women, and it can contribute really greatly to gender equality. The internet, digital platforms, mobile phones, digital financial services, these offer what we call leapfrog opportunities for everyone, but can help in particular bridge the divide by giving women the possibility to earn this additional income, to increase their employment opportunities, and to access knowledge and information. Together, we need to seize what we're seeing today in terms of this ecosystem and foster greater gender equality. We're not having enough conversation on what gender equality looks like, right? I think entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship, but we need to foster greater gender equality in the labor market. We need to boost economic growth, and we need to build a more inclusive digital world, right? I think inclusion is a word we use a lot at Google. I don't hear the word nearly used enough when you think about entrepreneurship in India. I think for that reason, as I mentioned, a coalition has come together between Bain and Google and Sheroes and all the the examples that Seema had, that Megha had provided around, Seema, who leads all. We're coming together because we need to apply a gender lens to everything that we're doing, whether it's products, services, any intervention, because only then can we actually, really, break this gap that exists. Because technology, and I'll just end with this, can create a really level playing field for everyone, but we need to ensure that it is there within communities. We need to make sure there's role models for women, that we can show the transformational impact that technology has on a woman, on her family, on her community, on her village, on her city, and to show just how women are being able to bounce back with everything that's happening around her.
My next question is about this need for culture and mindset change that both of you spoke about. While there are many men who take part in domestic responsibilities, however, in most Indian households, it is still a reality that, women have to take on a disproportionately higher burden of the work at home. So how critical do you think it is to bring about this shift in mindset, to bridge or to rather reduce the gender gap in entrepreneurship? Sapna?
No, it's a great question. I think, balancing a business with often unpaid roles as caregivers, household operators, and home-based workers, it's very difficult, right? I think, and is the encouragement there? And I think we've seen, especially during COVID, women are now having, it used to be what you would call a double shift. Now they're calling it the double shift of having to manage so much. And do they have the support that they need at home to push forward? I'll say that, I've been inspired when I've met women who have been held back traditionally and would have never thought that they would have gotten support from a husband or a father around, building a business on our own. But once the impact is seen, a family or a community, when they see the impact that it can have in terms of economic contribution, ultimately that's what it comes down to. If a woman can have an economic contribution to a household, that is game changing. That's life changing for many. And so when that's seen and when that's witnessed, I've seen support come. Right, I've seen support come for women to be able to push forward. It's not easy, and I don't see it all the time. But I think, again, it comes back to role modeling and mentorship. If women see that it's possible and they have, experiences, stories that they can point to of where it's been done, and I have many, through the work that we've been doing as with Internet Sati, I've seen women start honey businesses. I've seen women start e-commerce, businesses themselves, become designers, to think about, selling spices online. I've seen a number of things that give me hope, but it only happens if we talk about this more and we share more stories and we show how fathers and husbands have turned around and how communities have turned around. But ultimately, look, it comes down to economics. And when economic improvement happens, when economic opportunity is realized, then people change their mind. And so we need women to push forward to show what's possible so that this mindset can change. But it's a long road ahead of us.
So before we wrap up the session, I would like to thank both my panelists for this very thought-provoking and engaging conversation. And I would like to sign off with this hope that while the pandemic has hit hard women entrepreneurs, some of the positives that has come out of it in terms of greater use of technology and more acceptance of things like remote working can, going forward, not only help lower the gender divide in entrepreneurship, but also prove to be the turning point for women entrepreneurs in India. Thank you very much.
Sapna and Megha, thank you so much for being a part of the forum and for sharing such rich insights with our attendees. There are many budding and upcoming entrepreneurs attending this year's forum, and ladies, I really hope you've been taking notes. We move on to another conversation with two inspiring women. They're intelligent, talented, and their expertise in their domains is unsurpassed. They also belong to families who own a majority stake in two of the largest business conglomerates in the country. Yet, they face an uphill battle in their fight for equality.
Thank you for joining in. Both our guests have reached the pinnacle of their professional, corporate, and social lives. But that's not the reason, or rather, that's not the only reason why we are chatting with them today. They're here because they are not ready to accept the status quo. In fact, they're challenging it. They're here because both have raised their voice seeking real gender parity in corporate boardrooms. They're here because they're fighting for equality in India Inc.'s storied business families for their fair share. Please welcome Dr. Valli Arunachalam, a nuclear engineer by training and daughter of M.V. Murugappan, former executive chairman, Murugappa Group of Chennai. Joining her, Shanu S.P. Hinduja, chairperson of Hinduja Bank, arguably the only chair for a Swiss or even an European bank that I'm aware of. She is also the co-chair of United Nations Global Accelerator. Thank you both for joining the Economic Times Women's Forum. This fight for equality that we're calling this session, is it a shade or two more difficult in a business family? And if so, how does it really manifest?
In a patriarchal family such as the Murugapas, the sons are groomed at a very early age into the business. The mindset that pervades the family is the sons are entitled to the bulk share of the wealth, and they will have total control of the business. The daughters, on the other hand, they are groomed to accept the ways of the patriarchy without question, and the consequences for not accepting those beliefs are you're ostracized, you're considered, within quotes, unwomanly, unreasonable, arrogant,
Ambitious.
and if and because of this labeling, women in a patriarchy are afraid to speak up, even if their concerns are legitimate ones. And moreover, because they have been in the dark and kept out of the business, and they're usually not financially independent, they have to suffer in silence. And I think that in this present day and age, when we are sending, the Mars rover to Mars, and this is not acceptable at all. And if at all, it is these leading business families that should showcase their leadership by promoting gender equality and empowerment within their own families. And even the Supreme Court, in the most recent ruling, has put men and women on an equal platform when it comes to ancestral property.
Yeah. Shanu, you also think that it's time business families wake up and smell the coffee, quite literally?
I can give you the positive aspect of the men who actually have been in the background. And I think also this differs in family to family, but the common problem that has been emphasized by Ms. Wali is very much there, is persistent. But it's the circumstances. I never felt betrayed by my parents, my sister, my grandfather. There were many, and there are many, who like the aspect of having women, girls being equal in my family. Now, this is a contradiction, because what I find quite strange is that it's more difficult in a business family because circumstances are brought in front of us due to the various different aspects of the growth of money and the power of money that family members hold. And Ms. Wali's points are very valid. Do we, our generation, do we really need to be the ones who have to hold out the weapons and keep fighting and neglecting our work? Or are certain men or even females in most of our families willing to grow up and understand that each of us working is bringing economic growth? That's the bottom line. And in fact, it's adding value to the family. So honestly, I think this exists everywhere, maybe somewhere less, somewhere more. But to me, it's not about the past. It's about me wanting to know if these circumstances will be changed by the people who don't want this equality, because all they're doing, they're wasting our time in wanting to do this battle instead of using our time to create more economic growth, and this way the families prosper more.
Vali, I remember you recently, I was going through some of your interviews. One of your interviews, you said, you know what, I can be a nuclear engineer by training, but I'm not radioactive. But of course, other members of the Ambadi Investments, which is the holding company of Murugappa Group, they still think you're radioactive. And it's very unfortunate, the voting, the way it went. But you also said that they are not being able to understand the contribution a woman can bring to the board. Can you elaborate?
What transpired at the Ambadi board meeting, it came as a shocker to me and my immediate family, the way the family unanimously voted against my appointment as a director. Given that I have the more educational qualification than many of the present and past members, I do not lack the experience by any standards. The only valid reason that I can see for the rejection is that I am female, and there's nothing I can do about it, right? It is what it is. But what I think women bring to the table is a fresh perspective. There have been numerous studies by reputed companies like the McKinseys that show that inclusion of women on the board brings certain additional dimensions, such as, the power to, and I think Shanu can talk more to this, the power to handle risk more appropriately. Women are known for, their better risk management skills. They are known for their collaborative skills, for being inclusive, for taking everybody's opinion or the expert's opinion, and then in a very objective way, making a reasoned decision. So their decision-making power. And plus, whether you like it or not, the numbers, 50% of India's population is women, right? And shouldn't our corporate boards reflect that? Because after all, the buying power is both with men and women, and we need to have that representation not trickle up, but escalate up to the highest levels, the boardroom.
But Shanu, you are in a profession, banking, which is so dominated by men. You are arguably the only women chair of a Swiss bank, probably of that of a European bank as well. How different is the conversation, from the board or other stakeholders, when a woman controls the, chairs the board meeting, or, talks to other shareholders versus, this whole boys club syndrome that I call it?
Do you notice that I'm wearing a tie? Okay, there's a real good reason for that. This is what I've always tried to debate. Do you have to dress a certain way to get accepted? Yeah. So I decided, why not start wearing my father's ties to work? Maybe when a man or a woman looks at my face when I'm sitting on the chair of this bank, and the minute they start to see a tie, maybe they will see more of, we all have a yin and a yang, so maybe they'll connect more to the yang than the yin. So to fight this battle, all I can tell you is that we've all been given tools, all of us. And I think it's a word that Ms. Wali and me agreed on the other day. I think it's about having guts. All of us women have the gift to fight this power battle, but it takes a few to have the guts to want to face the consequences. So let me put it back to your question. Is it tough in the Swiss banking world? Is it easier somewhere else? I think it's a question of your surroundings. It's also a question of how much power you have to use to bring some sublime energy into that environment. Yes, women power is not as high in the Swiss banking, or maybe, theoretically, maybe all over the world. But I just know that there's one difference. I think the difference I had to face is that when you worked as a professional and you've come in as a career woman and you were elected by your independent board members, even though it's a family bank, and if people understand the Swiss regulations, they'll understand that one of the stigmas that sometimes a woman like me faces if she's moving up in her own family bank is that, oh, if they don't know enough about you, they think, okay, you got this on a golden platter, which I did. I really did. I had to work from the age of 14 to get to where I am today. But there are many on my board who've loved this change. They've just really admired it. I can't be subjective and say that, there are less women in the Swiss banking field just because it's more threatening. I just feel the doors have opened a little bit too late. And maybe me holding this space will help other women to feel inspired to come in here.
Right. Ali, you're in America, and for the last 1 or 2 years, we've seen the whole Me Too movement play out. Started in America, then spread all over the world. Has that really been a very important watershed for all women? Do you feel that Me Too movement has actually changed the entire gender dynamics in office or workplace? Just like banking, you're also in a field which is, I think, you have more men than women. So you must be also facing challenges. So, how do you see yourself, and how do you see the Me Too movement affect, your workplace and your life and the way you see it get played out?
So let me first address my personal point of view,
Yeah.
and then I'll talk about the Me Too movement.
Sure.
So on a personal level, as a lone woman in a class of 20, pursuing a doctoral degree in a totally male-dominated field of nuclear engineering, I was respected for my skills and for my ability. And I did not encounter gender inequality.
Right.
And as a technocrat, with a career spanning 24 years in multinational Fortune 500 companies, I was respected for my accomplishments and what I brought to the table.
Sure.
And I did not experience gender inequality. But ironically, it was in my own family that I experienced gender inequality at its worst. It is very sad that it happened that way. But moving on to the Me Too movement, I think the Me Too movement started with a certain focus, but then I think it has expanded across to various sectors, including social work, etc. I think it has brought a lot of visibility to women's issues, and I think it's here to stay.
I just wanted to ask both of you, and start with Shanu, that the fight, or the difficulties that you've been facing from family members and others, it's not sudden, right? It's been going on for a while. What made both of you decide, this is it, enough is enough, and and no more, and take the action that you've taken thereafter?
I don't think it's about enough is enough. I like I said, I think it's circumstances. If circumstances are built up around you for making sure that or I mean, I'm here working hard. I'm chairing a bank. To be honest with you, I'd rather have more time to do that than to fight other battles. And it supports everything that Miss Vali and what I've written about before, which is Macintosh. Proving it that really are we really trying to divert and give us crazy circumstances to sit and waste our time in doing all that? Or would you all like to for us to bring you more profitability?
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
Okay. And we all complain about, people complain about dowry. I mean, here you are having women who want to be self-sufficient. They want to shoulder the responsibilities of the family. They want to be seen as people who care about how they save the money, use the money, which is exactly what my parents taught me. But it just shows you that family support also adds for a lot, not just the power of money that you hold to fight battles like this.
Vali, you have your mom, your sister. When you decided that you will raise your voice and what were their feedback? This is something that's been going on for 120 years. Let it continue, or they said, thank God, Vali, finally somebody is saying no, this can't go on forever.
So, I mean, this is a collective fight, a fight that for my mother, my sister, myself. And before I get to the enough is enough moment for us, I just want to preface it a little bit so you understand the context. My parents always instilled in us the importance of fighting for what is right, no matter what the challenge is. Right? And my father's wish was very simple. As a father, he wanted to leave his inheritance to his wife and his two daughters. And we truly believed that the Murugappa family, who prides itself on integrity, responsibility, respect, you can go look it up on the Murugappa website, we truly believed that they would show respect for my father's wishes, and they would exhibit the integrity and the responsibility by taking care of his next of kin exactly as he wished.
Right.
But alas, that was not to be, despite all what my father did for the business and for each one of them personally, and despite all the efforts that we put in to resolve this matter amicably, and out of the limelight, they refused. They kicked the can down the road. They lured us into thinking they were going to settle us, only to kick back. And that's when we realized, if we, women of means, are having such a difficult time accomplishing my father's last wishes, or getting them to execute on it, what about the millions of other Indian women who don't have the support network, who don't have the means? What about them? And that was our enough is enough movement. Right. We felt we needed to take this to another level. We need to fight for those 500 million Indian women who probably have their own challenges and who are would be benefited by this. And I do want to end this with a big thank you to all the media, the men, the women who have come out in support of my cause and my fight for gender equality.
We are all with both of you, in fact, in this quest. The last I want to ask is the last question I wanted to ask you is, ever since both your fights became public, have other women, even women from the family, got in touch saying thank God you're doing it. I can't say this publicly, but thank you, Shanu. Thank you, Vali.
Like I mentioned, Arijit, in a patriarchal family, there are consequences for speaking up and for supporting someone who has stood up for their rights. And no, I have not received any support.
Shanu?
I think my sister Veenu is a unique example of maybe the only woman who must have done that. And I think my daughter, but other than that, I don't think I have received any support from within the family.
Thank you very much, both of you, for taking this time out and talking to us. I'm sure you have inspired not just women, but several of us men as well in this fight. And we are all with you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vali and Shanu, for sharing your stories with us today. And through your continued resilience, you have shown the paths to many women and men to stand up for what is rightfully theirs. And we wish you all the very best. And thank you again. Dear attendees, I really hope you're finding these conversations as motivational and uplifting as I am. So please continue to share the message from these exemplary women through your social media handles. When doing so, don't forget to use hashtag Let's Hear It and hashtag ETWF 2020. Our last speaker of the day needs no introduction. She is the country's pioneering biotech entrepreneur, a healthcare visionary, and a passionate philanthropist. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot we can learn from India's most valuable woman entrepreneur, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw.
Namaste. I'm Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, and I'm delighted to participate in the ET Women's Forum. And today, I just want to share some thoughts about how we rebuild and reboot our economy in a very Atmanirbhar manner, which really is about entrepreneurship. So as an entrepreneur, I really believe that we have a unique opportunity to rebuild and reboot our economy, where we get hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs who can actually build their businesses in a very exciting way. As you know, the COVID crisis has really impacted the SME sector in a very, very significant manner. And to me, the SME sector is an entrepreneurial sector. They have all suffered from the huge challenge of accessing capital as they rebuild their businesses post-COVID. And we also know that women have suffered even more than men when it comes to losing jobs in the rural job market, because they are the ones who have actually found it very difficult to access jobs wherever they might be in the informal sector. And I know that women entrepreneurs have found it even more difficult to access capital than pre-COVID times. So there is an investor bias that supports men in every realm, whether it is startups, whether it is SMEs, and whether it is just the job market in general. So we as a country must understand that until we have gender parity and gender equity when it comes to job opportunities, we will not be able to build a sustainable economic future for our country. As a woman entrepreneur myself, I know the grave challenges I have faced building my company in the 70s and 80s, and even today I find that a lot of women entrepreneurs who are trying to build their businesses face the same hurdles that I faced many decades ago. This is because there is a perception bias that women are not risk takers, women are not ambitious enough, and women are not aggressive when it comes to competition. And I think I have busted all these myths because it is absolutely not true. But women have been subjugated into believing that this is the deficiencies that they suffer from. And I think women have to rise beyond this. We have seen in the business world very strong leadership displayed by women at the helm, whether it is in the banking sector, where I have huge respect for people like Arundhati Bhattacharya. I have huge respect for the others in the banking sector, and we have also seen very strong leadership in the tech sector, in many other sectors. The healthcare sector has this amazing, 4 sisters who are leading the Apollo Hospital group. Sangeeta, Preeta, Sunita, and Shobana. All of them are very strong women leaders. So I just think that we have to bust this myth, whether it is, the professional sector, whether it is the business sector. I think we have a huge number of examples that show to you that women are as competent as men. And I think we have to now rebuild our economy, making sure that we give equal opportunities in terms of diversity, including gender diversity. And in this, I do believe that entrepreneurship has a very strong role to play in rebuilding our economy. We have been plunged into a digital world. We have been plunged into a world that is something we don't recognize as what we were familiar with prior to COVID. Whether it is, e-platforms, whether it is contactless services, whether it is digital, platforms of doing business, I think there is huge number of opportunities. And I believe that we need to now build businesses which are now looking at the future in terms of how life is going to play out in the times ahead. For this, we will need to provide access to capital. We will need to provide a large number of fiscal support and fiscal incentives. And we will have to make sure that everyone has access to all these policies and schemes that we come out with. I think as a woman, I do believe that women should actually rise to this challenge and to this opportunity. And technology is agnostic to women. And I have myself seen that business is also agnostic to gender. Okay. So I think women have this opportunity of building businesses. I mean, think about just the whole opportunity. I hate to use the cliched word, but there are a large number of opportunities for women working out of home. For instance, you've got women making masks, you've got women making, eatables, and you can actually do a lot with these kind of needs that that the COVID has introduced as opportunities. And then linking it to technology makes it a much more scalable business, a much more vibrant business, and that's where the partnerships count. That's where the collaborations happen. And that's where this whole opportunity of accessing the needs of today will become much larger. We have seen that in the biotech space, a large number of biotech startups which had men and women coming together to address the challenge of testing. And as you know, My Labs, which came out with the first indigenous RT-PCR kit, was the effort of a scientific team led by a woman. We've also seen a large number of other biotech startups where women have played a very strong role in coming up with new diagnostics, There have been vaccine development initiatives. I admire Mahima Datla of Biological E. She is actually so focused on bringing the J&J vaccine to the global markets. In addition to that, she herself has collaborated with the Baylor Institute to develop yet another vaccine. So there are umpteen numbers of examples of where women in science are also doing their bit. Gagandeep Kang is also leading a huge effort in understanding the coronavirus, in understanding the genomic evolution of viruses, etc., etc. So there's no dearth of women in science who have huge opportunities and a huge role to play. So I think it's very important for us as a country to recognize the importance of bringing in diverse thinking, diverse creativity, and thereby making sure that men and women have equal opportunity to the road ahead. So to me, Atmanirbhar is about entrepreneurship, and the entrepreneurial ecosystem has to be made a self-perpetuating system that can actually allow entrepreneurs to access capital, entrepreneurs to get to the market and create the kind of sustainable perpetual cycle of growth and feedback loop that you need to grow these businesses. So to me, that's how I built my business. I built my business over 4 decades, where I started as a very frugal entrepreneur. I started building my business step by step, and all the profits I earned at every step I plowed back into scaling my business even more. And today, of course, we have created a very successful biopharmaceutical company of global scale. It takes time and it takes commitment and a sense of purpose to build businesses. And today we have a huge opportunity to build businesses for the future, where the regulatory impediments are much lower, where data and data analytics can actually shrink a lot of the timelines and provide you very rapid access to markets. And it allows you the opportunity to be predictive and informed in your judgments. So I think there's a lot to be done today for the more educated entrepreneur, but even for the less educated entrepreneur, I think you have a lot of opportunities, both in rural and in urban India. So the opportunities are different, but think of the healthcare sector. The healthcare sector itself today affords a huge opportunity for multiple players, whether it is about the NGO sector, which can actually play a huge role in enabling and training and skilling our healthcare workers, our ASHA workers, to use technology to improve our healthcare system. And I, for one, feel very optimistic that COVID has thrown up huge weaknesses in our healthcare system, which is forcing governments, both at the state level and at the center, to invest more in healthcare. Health is wealth. And I think these are going to throw up huge numbers of jobs and a huge number of entrepreneurial opportunities. We have telehealth now, which is going to be a huge industry. We have e-pharmacies, which is also going to be a new cadre of industries. And therefore, we have a lot of opportunities in leveraging digital platforms to create new businesses. And in this, entrepreneurs have a very huge role to play. Why should e-pharmacies only be, focused on urban markets? I think e-pharmacies have a very big role even in rural India. I believe telehealth has a very important role to play in rural India. And through the ASHA workers, you can deliver telehealth in a very, very optimal manner. So just look at all the opportunities there are. Just see how we can basically upgrade our rural healthcare systems. I think Ayushman Bharat has a very important role to play through their wellness centers, because right now it's focused on tertiary treatment. But what we also need to look at is preventive healthcare in our primary health centers. And of course, primary health centers are based at a state level, but the wellness centers under Ayushman are going to be under the Ayushman Bharat umbrella. And this is where, again, technology and preventive healthcare is going to be a huge opportunity where you need to use technology very intelligently. So I've just mentioned a whole plethora of opportunities, at least in the healthcare sector, in the science and technology sector, in the biotech sector. But as I mentioned, there are so many other opportunities, whether it is IT, whether it is other digital opportunities in just the financial sectors. Look at the payment opportunities that have come up. And of course, apps and wearables and what have you. I mean, there are huge opportunities, whether it is robotics, whether it is using AI to pursue science and innovation. You name it, there are umpteen opportunities. And I want a very strong message to women saying, at this time, don't alienate yourself and believe that you're not capable of addressing these opportunities. This is your time. You have never had such a fair and equitable opportunity to address such new and exciting opportunities. So please don't subjugate yourself. I always feel women subjugate themselves. You must go out there. You must confront and address these opportunities and make sure that you seize these opportunities, because this kind of a time and moment will take a long time to reappear. So this is your opportunity. This is your time, women. Go out there, seize those opportunities and convert them into great, great success stories for all of you and all of us to celebrate as women. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran, for addressing the 2020 ET Women's Forum. And I'm sure our attendees have been listening raptly, and your message of seizing this opportunity is going to spur many women, whether they are entrepreneurs or working professionals. So thank you once again. That brings us to the end of day 5 of the Economic Times Women's Forum. I would like to once again thank our partners MasterCard and Google for supporting us in this initiative. So next week will be the final session of the 2020 forum, so don't give it a miss. We will hear from 2 women who are building online communities that help and support other women. We will also have a panel discussion with some of the country's leading online influencers who've taken their hobbies to the next level. And finally, Melinda Gates will bring the 2020 forum to a close with a stirring address. So don't forget to log in at 11 a.m. sharp on the 28th of October. Thank you so much for participating, and until next week, it's goodbye.
Let's hear it for voices getting louder, clearer, stronger, bolder. Let's hear it for those who are fighting fit and raring to go. Let's hear it for heroes rewriting India's stories. Let's hear it for women wanting change and for women leading it. Let's hear it for the power of expressing, arguing, agreeing, questioning, and for being vocal. Let's hear it for each other. Let's hear it for the power of 500 million.